Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Coding Cardio. Today we're going to focus on the position property in CSS, specifically around fixed, relative, and absolute positioning. We're going to dive into this example. We can see what the differences are between those three. And I pulled this example from the Mozilla Developer Network around the CSS position property, and I'll include a link to the description over there if you want to check it out yourself. But I figured we would I'd kind of walk through what they're describing. So looking at this example, we have 4 boxes here, and these are all the same. They're just inline blocked, and each have this block class. And just for the sake of looking at this, we will target the ID here, and we will give this a different background so we can make it stand out a little bit more so we can see what's going on. So we're going to play around with the positioning of this 2 box right here. And first, let's start off with fixed. I think that's the easier of the 3 to sort of wrap your head around. So if we give that a position of fixed, immediately we will notice what looks like our box number 3 disappearing, and I'll comment that out so we can see it pop up and then disappearing. So that's what it looks like, but what's actually happening here is that box number 2 is sort of being plucked out of the normal document flow. So we can see we have these 4 divs here, but just imagine that this div is just being removed from how this is organized right here and sort of living on its own away from the rest of these divs. And once we put a positioning property on that, we can then control sort of the space of where that lives. So if we were to say on the top we don't want any space there, we would see that over here that space gets reduced, and we could say left, we want 0 pixels as well. And we could see our 3 box pop up right now, and our 2 is living on the edge of this border right here, on the edge of the viewport. And we can drag it up and down to see that. So I guess to start off, fixed positioning is going to remove whatever the element is from the normal flow of the document, and it's going to position it inside of the initial containing block, or rather the root element, which you can think of as like the top level element. And in this case, we're going to see it right on the edge of the viewport here. And this can be useful. You might see this if you see like a I don't know, like a fixed footer that you see on some web page, that we can make sure we could give like a width here of like 100%. And we have this fixed footer here that we can, as we scroll, it'll be overlaid on top of anything else. And that's how it's going to treat fixed. So let's remove that. And the next one I want to go through is relative positioning. So let's walk through that. We see relative positioning. Nothing really happens here. We can see everything's remaining the same, but the difference is if we put our top properties back on there, we will see that our box number 2 starts to move. And similar to fixed, this is going to respect those top, left, bottom, and right positions, but this isn't going to get removed out of the normal flow of the document. It's going to remain the same. And whatever position properties you apply to it, it's going to affect it from where it is in the document. And we can see that right here. And let's put something even bigger so we can see it move around. And why would this be useful? We will see when we get into absolute positioning why relative would be useful for that. So let's get into that position absolute. And right off the bat, we'll see, similar to fixed, it looks like a 3 disappears, and we might know by now that it just means that 2 is laying on top of it. So similar to fixed, this absolute positioned item gets removed from the normal flow of the document. So again, if we were to do top 0 pixels, we would see pretty much the same thing, in that our 2 gets right up against the edge here of the viewport. There is one very important difference though, in that let's say we have another div that says box container, and let's say, whoops, that's not what I meant to do, box container, and let's say we put these divs inside of the box container. So now these things are living inside of this HTML element now. We can see that nothing really has changed here, but let's container, let's say give it a background of light blue, just so we can kind of make this stand out a little bit more. And then just some padding to make it a little bit more easy to see visually. So again, we don't see anything changing with the absolutely positioned item, but if we were to then give a position property to this div, and let's say it's relative, now we see that absolutely positioned item now is against the relatively positioned item. And that's really the main difference there with absolute. It's going to look for the nearest ancestor that has a position property applied to it, and then sort of treat that as where it's living inside of. So again, relative positioning can be useful in this case if we know we have a position, if we know we have an element inside of that that's going to be absolutely positioned. This way we can sort of trust that our absolutely positioned item is never going to live outside of this box container once we have a relatively positioned item inside of it. And again, we could just apply the same properties here, and we can sort of move that around and treat that just the same. So once this absolutely positioned item, it's going to keep going up until it finds something with a position property. If it can't find anything with a position property, it's going to act similar to fixed in that it's going to look for that initial containing blocker or the root element to position itself against. And you can see that if we were to kind of give this 0 pixels again, we could see that that would treat the root element as the thing it's living inside of. And then we could do something like that. It would jump down, and maybe we want to have this thing living like a static footer inside of another element or something like that. But you can start to see why that's useful. So just to sum it up, fixed positioning is going to treat the root element as sort of the thing that it's living inside of. No matter what the structure is, it's going to get removed from the normal flow of the document. Relative positioning is going to remain in the same flow of the document, but any position properties you give it, top or bottom, it's going to be moved from where it normally lives. And then absolute positioning will get removed from the normal flow of the document, and it's going to look for the nearest element with a position property, and then treat that as the thing that it's living inside of, and any position properties it will apply to it from that positioned property, if that makes sense. And then if it can't find one, it's going to go up to the initial containing block or the root element, just once again to reiterate that point. So yeah, those are the differences between the three. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any further questions, I'm happy to answer any in the comments, or feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. And one more time, I will leave the link to the Mozilla Developer Network where you can kind of go in depth with this a little bit more, and you can see some visual examples over on that website. But hopefully this is enough to at least get you started. And yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you learned something here today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.